We have a bunch of announcements. We have the 2.5 release that got pushed back to the 19th. So that's just a heads up in case anyone was waiting out for that. If you need to get more updates, that's going to be available on the project timeline. There we go. Roadmap. Thank you. We have an RFC for search pipelines open, which I believe Mark has worked on a good bit. I saw him hop online, so we'll drop that here in the chat. Make sure and check that out. So search pipelines are basically just allowing you to add steps, such as re-ranking and things like that in your search pipeline. So very cool. The SQL plugin is looking for feedback. Anyone using the SQL plugin, I'm going to say for anything at this point, because it has not gotten very much feedback. And by very much, I mean any. If you're using the SQL plugin, you have mappings you can share, you have a use case you can share, we'd really like to hear from you. I just dropped that link in there as well. So that is the SQL, SQL plugins.
So it looks like you dropped the same link twice.
Did I? I sure did. Why is my copy and paste not working? There we go. There we go. Also, I'm going to be presenting at DataOps Poland. So if you want to know about what search relevance is or why search relevance is important to you, even if you're working on logs, check it out. I'm going to drop a link in for that too. I think, and I'm not going to cut the link. There we go. DataOps Poland or data, depending on who you are and how you talk. So I mentioned we have a very full agenda. Here's our agenda for today. We're going to start out with a demo of the migration tool from Chris Helma. Peter's going to walk us through the identity feature and ask for some feedback. Lukasz is going to be talking about the available analyzers endpoint. He built a demo plugin, and honestly, I thought this one was super useful, so really excited for that one as well. And then Chris is going to finish this off by talking about the contributor coins, which you should hang around if you haven't gotten one and you think you should. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Chris, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Howdy, y'all. My name is Chris Helma, and I'm a senior developer on the open source side of the OpenSearch project team. Been at Amazon for about 10 years now, and currently I'm working on, I guess our team is sort of focused on improving the experience around upgrades and migrations. And in our sort of parlance, migrations are like, moving from like a self-managed solution to a managed solution, and upgrades are like changing the version of the software. So I guess they're a bit of a distinction there. So for the last month and a half, 2 months, me and a couple of people on my team have been working on the upgrades side of that equation. And specifically, we're sort of working backwards from kind of the perception in our sort of research that it's hard for people to tell what's going to go wrong during an upgrade in terms of like feature compatibility and changes in configuration, that sort of stuff, before they do it. So we were trying to develop a tool that enables people to basically say, okay, well, I'm starting with this cluster. I want to move to this version of Elasticsearch or OpenSearch. What's going to go wrong? What's going to go right? What have you tested? That sort of stuff. So with that in mind, our sort of general approach is to sort of say, okay, well, this is an opportunity for us to capture the entire community's understanding of things that go right and go wrong when you upgrade between various versions of the Elasticsearch and OpenSearch software. And we want to capture that into something we call our knowledge base, and we're still working on the branding. But the premise is we have this store that is like, we expect certain things to be true. They're called expectations. So like, for instance, in general, we expect the document count to be the same before and after an upgrade, for example. Or maybe between two certain versions, there's a bug that we expect to be present. And each of these expectations should be paired with a test that confirms for that particular version change and upgrade type, whether it's snapshot restore or rolling, that actually is present as we expected. And once we sort of have the expectations, we have the tests, we can make a pretty cool report that says, okay, well, here's all the things we expect. here's your starting cluster, here's the cluster version you want to go to, here's the things you should be looking out for, and here's the things that we expect to go well. So that's what we've been sort of trying to get to. So I'd like to go ahead and talk a little bit, or show you a little bit about sort of what that looks like right now. And this is all sort of, some parts of it are we're still figuring out the details of, and that'll kind of become clear as I demo. Let's see, share screen. Okay, so I mentioned we have a idea of a sort of a knowledge base, and in it is basically just expectations. In this particular case, our sort of goal is to make it so it's either low code or no code, depending on sort of what you're trying to express expectation-wise. So right now, what it currently is in our current sort of expression is we have a folder that contains JSON files that has some sort of identifier for the thing we expect to be true. And we sort of track that through various parts of the process for testing. And some sort of verbal description of what that expectation is. And depending on the expectation, we may have version ranges where we expect things to be true. So there's a bug between these two versions that the day of year format does some wacky stuff, and it's fixed on versions after it or before it. So, so that's kind of the idea of sort of how we express that. Sorry, 1 second. All of the, it's really annoying. All the Zoom stuff is popping up over my little tabs in the top of my, anyways. So, so we have these expectations, and then we have some tests that are used to sort of ensure they're accurate. And we're using a framework called Robot Framework. This allows you to have sort of a DSL that says, okay, well, for the consistent document count expectation, we basically perform a set of steps. And it's sort of a English-like expression as opposed to pure code, which is hopefully enables people who aren't experts in software development, et cetera, to just sort of contribute code, hopefully, and just make it in general easier to add expectations and tests. So in this particular case, we have the idea that for consistent document count, we create a sample index, and we will go ahead and add a couple of documents to it. And before, this is all before the upgrade. And then after the upgrade, we basically just check to see if the document count is the same, right? So the way this works is this is all done on our, in this case, my Mac. I basically have Docker containers. One is a pre-upgrade cluster, one is a post-upgrade cluster, and just do a snapshot restore from Elastic 7.10.2 to OpenSearch 1.3.6. So let me go ahead and demo the tool. I'm going kind of fast, there's a lot here, but so it's basically just a Python script, and you specify a configuration file that sort of has the boundaries of the test. In this case, it says very clearly that we're doing a snapshot restore, and from Elastic 7.10 to OpenSearch 1.3.6. Let's go ahead and run that. And while this is running, the premise of how this works is it's just running through a set of steps defined in a workflow. So if we go back to the code browser, it's basically just running these steps. You know, we load some configuration, make sure Docker is running correctly, do some additional setup for snapshot restore upgrades, figure out what tests we need to run, start a source cluster, which is just this Docker set of Docker containers on my laptop, run the pre-upgrade steps, which in this case is this stuff, which is just creating the index in the pre-upgrade cluster, right? We do a snapshot, start the target, the final cluster. So this is going to be the one this can be upgraded to, right? Then restore the snapshot from the starting one into the destination cluster, and then just check the results. So we should see that here. So we sort of have it broken up by step on the right-hand side, so left-hand side. You'll see those same step names. You'll see the sort of breakdown of the individual steps. And when we get to the actual pre-upgrade testing, we have the robot framework output sort of saying is what we did. And then same with the post-upgrade testing. And then we have a final report that indicates all of the tests that we have run, what they sort of, how they sort of worked out. So in this particular case, we have a test for consistent document count. We've written expectation, but we haven't written implementing tests for the day of year format, date range, query bug, which is applicable for this particular version of going from Elastic 7.10.2 to OpenSearch 1.3.6. So this is just indication we need to do some work here to add this test. So yeah, that's kind of a high-level overview of kind of what we've been working on. I'd like to sort of open up to questions to see if people want to dive into certain aspects of this, or I can continue on the presentation.
I have a question regarding tests. Like when we check what we are failing expectations, is this done dynamically? Like I can add things to test, or is it in the repository? Where is that configured?
Yeah, so the way, if you wanted to sort of add some tests or modify the existing tests, this is all this stuff is in a GitHub repo. And I think they should have linked the GitHub repo previously. Sorry, it's hard for me to check your chat right now. But I can make sure that's linked. But the idea would be that if you wanted to change the tests, you would find, you'd make a new file like this, right? You sort of link it to a particular expectation ID, right? You insert it into a stage of the workflow, if that makes sense, and then just do whatever you want. This is a custom DSL that is pretty easy to work on or expand. So, but in this particular case, creating documents and indexes and that sort of stuff. But if you wanted to like change it, you could easily add some additional code for that. But I think our goal is to make it to have a sufficiently large library of keywords and phrases that you would never need to write your own Python, hypothetically speaking. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Thanks.
Any other questions?
I have one. Is this something that is going to be, is this distributed on PyPy? Is this, how are people going to be able to get this, you know, when it is ready?
That's a good question. I mean, so the premise of this tool is it's kind of an all-in-one, well, we haven't gotten to distribution other than the fact that, you know, like it's sort of an all-in-one deal. You get it and you plop it somewhere, then you run it. It could be your laptop, it could be a CI/CD host, it could be whatever. Doesn't really matter as long as it's able to run, has sufficient resources to run, you know, enough Docker containers to do the test. Doesn't really matter where you plop it onto, if that makes sense.
Very cool.
And so so a question about this, the robot stuff. That's that we could potentially use that just to automate arbitrary operations in OpenSearch. It looks like that's kind of a secondary use of it. Is that something you anticipate using it for? I'm curious. Was this something that already existed? This particular robot part of it, or is that part of your own creation here?
No, it's a well-known framework for automating sort of arbitrary stuff. Like you can do anything with it. The sort of key innovation of what it does is at a high level provides a way of expressing steps to be run at certain stages, and then having a DSL to translate between sort of English-like language into actual code. But yeah, that's pre-existing.
That's awesome. I didn't know it existed.
Neither did I. My Brian Presley mentioned it to me, and I was like, "Oh man, I'm in love." So it's really cool. So unless there's any other comments, concerns, questions, et cetera, I'd love to get your feedback on this project. There should be a link to the sort of meta tracking issue for this in chat. Depending on sort of feedback, we're considering pivoting to a different work stream. We think this is super valuable. We're going to keep working on it in the future, hopefully. Our intention is to come back to this, but we're sort of wondering whether we might do something in the short term, depending on community feedback. So if you guys think that this is awesome and we need to keep working on being able to generate a report of all the issues you're going to run into for an arbitrary upgrade, let us know and sort of make your voice heard. So because we'll definitely take it into account when we're considering sort of prioritization, if that makes sense.
I could say we're planning an upgrade in the next in the upcoming quarter, and so from version 1.2 to version 2 point something. Haven't quite decided yet, and yeah, we'll definitely try this out, see how if we can contribute as well. If it, you know, at least contribute like feedback, at least, right? So we can.
That'd be awesome.
Okay.
So just to sort of, if you're actually interested in contributing, I would say that the actual test running mechanism is pretty robust. Like, you know, sort of the high level loop, the workflow is pretty robust. It works well. The areas that I think that would be really awesome to contribute to is just having more expectations and more tests. That's kind of what's, I think, missing right now. And maybe different like version compatibility. So right now we do 7.10.2 to 1.36. We would need to add some stuff to do 1.2 to 2.x or whatever.
Oh, I see.
I don't think that'll be particularly hard, but
we have, for example, like a very simple thing that we just started to see compatibility on our own was to just check index versions, right? That's the basic one.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that might work still, even as it is, right? Probably with not a lot of...
checking index version, I think it depends on sort of what we're talking about here. Yeah, I mean, so are you talking about basically index versions at the OpenSearch level or the Lucene level?
At the OpenSearch level, because we did a migration from Elasticsearch 6.8 to OpenSearch 1.2.3, and then we're going to go from there to 2. So anything that remains on version 6.8 of Elasticsearch would no longer be compatible.
Yep.
And in our manual testing, we saw that there's like a ton of those. So I'm guessing it would work as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, connect with us over the GitHub issue that should be linked, and we'll try to navigate the path forward together.
Great, thanks.
Yep. I think I'm probably way over my allotted time. So
no, you're actually solid. And we do have those links in the chat, but thank you so much, Chris. And like we mentioned, the links are in the chat for giving feedback, for the README for the tool. So definitely make sure to check those out. With that, we're going to now flip over to Peter, who is going to be giving us a little bit of an intro about identity. So Peter, take it away.
Thank you very much, David. Just a little bit of information about myself. I'm on the OpenSearch team based out of Austin, Texas. Right now, it's bright and sunny at about 10 in the morning, and I've closed all my windows to make sure it's as dark as possible in this room, because that's just how I roll. But I'm here today to talk a little bit about some of the next steps we're looking to take with the security plugin, as well as the like the identity concepts that are inside it. One of the things that I found problematic as someone who works on the security plugin is that it's optional. Like, plugins are things that you can choose to use. And while one of the things I would say is that the plugin we have for security shouldn't be the only one, the notion that these concepts are optional makes it really hard to leverage inside other custom plugins, inside the OpenSearch code base itself. it kind of forces us to graft functionality onto features that have already been built. And this makes it really easy to forget something. This also makes it really easy for us to have incongruity with how permissions kinds of systems are actually leveraged between different plugins. And so we're taking some steps. We're designing this out to figure out what the best ways to get this incorporated are. I know there's actually a rich ecosystem. There's several different kinds of plugins that offer different kinds of security. This is not a replacement for any of those. This is how can we make security incorporated in the product in a way that there's options available rather than today where there's kind of like this default no option. We'd love to be able to give folks that use OpenSearch assurance about the security posture of that cluster, as well as the posture of the other plugins and components they're using. One of the things that personally gets me a little itchy about plugins is they have a lot of control about what they can do, what they can interact with, and actually limiting that control, trusting that that plugin is working absolutely correctly and only interacting in the domain of things you want it to, sometimes can be disconcerting. So anyhow, this talking about that problem space, we've got a blog that'll be coming out shortly. And of the 4 areas that we're really thinking about, we want to add, right? Like, we're talking about changing some fundamental components. Well, what are the benefits of changing these things other than assurance, which as someone who works in the security space, that's actually worth quite a bit, at least for my peace of mind, for me to sleep at night. But the 4 major areas is, right now, there's no good way to do a permissions check. Dashboards users, I'm really sorry that there's no good way to tell you if you can edit the given dashboard or not until you hit the save button. We don't really have good like pre-commit checks. We don't have permissions checks that let you know if the action you're about to take is an action you can take. I know everyone that interacts with the dashboards UX or everyone that's building on dashboards UX would really love to make better user experiences. Additionally, for our programmatic workflows, we want to make sure that you can know if you're going down the right path or not. And for system administrators, you want to know if a user was configured correctly. I think that's one of our big blind spots for administrators that are setting up clusters, is it's kind of hard to know if you did the thing you were expecting. And so that's one of the things that's top of mind with us building this out, is that we should be able to ask what kind of permissions are available, assuming you have the permissions to check permissions, in lots of places in the product. I mentioned plugins. There's a new thing happening, and I don't want to take away from the extensions team. Extensions is another way that we're building extensibility into OpenSearch. It's different than plugins, and it's a huge topic. It's super exciting, and I don't want to take anything away or misrepresent extensions. There's a great blog post by Sarat from that team that's out there right now. And if someone can link that, or I'll paste the link in the chat. That's kind of one of the ways we want to add more extensibility into the product. We want to make sure that you can authorize those extensions to do the things you want and not let them do things you don't want them to do. So that way, we're really just making what an extension and what plugins can do a lot more transparent for our users. And then, some of the things I've alluded to about like assurance, we actually want to make real permissions boundaries that are enforced in the code base. This is much more kind of like a technical component that rolls out into how we use the product. But we really want to be able to say concretely, like, if you're doing this, it is secured. And only, these things that maybe you've granted administrative privileges to, or some other level of privilege to, actually have access to it. And kind of along that is, we've got these background tasks that run inside OpenSearch. This is a classic example of something that's really hard to interact with today, to say like, well, what can a background task be capable of? We want to make sure that this new security isolation also applies to those tasks. So everywhere inside the product, you can know who is doing that action, and you can potentially restrict or allow permissions to those things. This is kind of a beginning of this effort. We've got a prototyping branch, which is features identity. And we are taking steps right now to figure out, what pieces and, that we want to get into the main of OpenSearch so folks can start experimenting. But there's a lot more way to go. And one of the things we're definitely curious about is different kind of extensibility points onto the system that other folks that are providing security features or other kinds of identity related features that people would like to have. So that's kind of the space I wanted to talk to you today. Thank you guys so much for your time. And I'd love it if anybody had any questions, or if not, I can just sit here and, stare into the camera fondly.
Hey, hello, Peter. I have a question regarding the permissions on the new system. So just to make sure I understand, one problem we have a lot is that you install a plugin and you have this security policy file where there's like a bunch of security stuff there, a bunch of permissions, and then you install another plugin and you have to extend that. But the result of that is all the plugins now have they have the basically all the permissions now in this file, although you probably wanted to only give a certain number of permissions to one plugin and another to this plugin. Does that solve this, the new identity change?
So I don't know that this will solve that particular issue in the very near term. But if we can know the identity of the actions that are happening from a given plugin, presumably we'll be able to better author and target policies like that. The Java Security Manager is what's used for a lot of those things. And we're certainly looking at options for how we can deal with its deprecation and removal in newer versions of Java. But certainly those policy files, like one of the things about them that makes me, this is that further itchiness, is that someone could just say, please grant me star policies.
Yeah.
You're telling the system what you want rather than having the system say, well, I'm only giving you XYZ. So yeah, I'm with you there, Sam. And it's on our radar, but we're not targeting that for the next couple months.
Okay, so the identity in that scenario sounds like just in a way like somewhat redundant, right, with the security plugin that also has its identity functionalities.
Yes, in many ways it will be redundant, and so hopefully one of the things we can do is we can stop using some of the things in the security plugin that often have to use a simulation framework to know what the product's actually doing. It'd be much easier to add those checks inside like OpenSearch itself, so that it knew the task that was running or the resource that was being acted on.
Got it. And sorry, one last question. Does that effort also include the FIPS compliance integration, or is it different work stream?
That's going to be a different work stream. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Great questions. Thanks, Sam.
I think I can give more detail for Sam's question a little bit. So GSM deals with Java access to methods, and plugins once installed have equivalent of full access to everything that happens on the node, with some limitations from that security policy file. So the extensibility project wants to isolate plugins into separate JVMs, containers, virtualized environments, whatever, so that we can ultimately run untrusted code where that the plugin cannot reach deep into OpenSearch and get things it's not allowed to, and give administrators the ability to say, this plugin is trusted to read data, or this data, or that data. So that's within the extensibility project, and in its roadmap, there is isolation there. Identity deals with authorized paths where I can get data, but then I want to restrict data to certain users or certain principals where a user is not allowed to get data from another user, kind of thing. So it's a little bit of a high level construct, but we'll need both to truly secure OpenSearch. And finally, there is the implementations for various parts of this permissioning model currently live in multiple places, so various plugins may interpret them slightly differently. There are permissions like FLS, DLS that may have that are very difficult to understand sometimes from the point of view of plugins or versus core. So we want to move those implementations into core so that plugins don't have to reason about access such as FLS and DLS, and just centralize the way to do this kind of logic and document it once and for all plugins to take advantage of. That's identity.
Well said, DB. Thank you.
Sam, does that help?
Yes, that helps a lot, DB. I think I was confusing the number of efforts, and I was bothering poor Peter here with a bunch of unrelated or somewhat orthogonal work streams. So thank you for the clarification.
I have a
Very ominous, Amitai.
Sorry, that's I'm in an office and my laptop was open on the Zoom, so that was funny. Okay, so got like a few, that was sort of the DJ moment. I have a question about the security. We have like because it's a platform at Logzo, so we have like different authentication layers, and we don't use a security plugin at the moment. We do think it makes a lot of sense in terms of role-based access. And there are a lot of things that I wish I had in terms of role-based access. However, one thing that kind of bugs me, and it may be because I just don't know how the security plugin works well enough. So for example, a node might fail and the cluster may be somewhat unavailable, but parts of it might be available. And in this case, security plugin might not work, like it can't authenticate because the data itself of who's trying to be authenticated is missing at that moment, though the data that the user is trying to access is available. Has that ever been an issue with this type of using like security on the platform that is hosting the security data itself?
So for the security plugin that ships with the OpenSearch distribution, that plugin actually replicates the security state on all the nodes in the cluster. So even with like a network, or you're not doing a network round trip for much of that information. But that said, if you're connecting to an external IDP, like you're using SAML or Kerberos or some other system that's doing authentication, of course, if you don't have access to that, you might see an issue attempting to log in. But we store all of the other information, the permissions information, in a shared index across the cluster on all nodes.
That makes a lot of sense. I don't know why that didn't come to mind. All right, thanks.
Hi, Peter. This is Jochen from Eliatra. I have actually two quick questions. So the first one is, as far as I understand, this is kind of an effort to, I don't know, standardize how other plugins could benefit from security, like maybe getting access to a user object and to permissions and stuff like that, which is a great thing. But you mentioned that there will still be possibility for third-party security plugins. That would be the first question. And the second one, because someone, sorry, I forgot the name, talked about DLS and FLS. Will there be, also the, let's say, possibility to implement those features as a third-party tool? And the reason I'm asking is because, we have a lot of customers which have different expectations. So for DLS, for example, what if you have a role with a DLS setting and another role without? What should be the results? And customers just have different expectations. So how much do you actually want to, tie into core, and where would a third-party plugin still be, free to provide a different implementation?
Sure. Well, I guess one of the things just to highlight, like being that this is a new functionality we're adding, There will be a version of this, the implementation for this identity system that basically does nothing. It will take effort to get folks onboarded, and we'll need to figure out a great way to migrate existing clusters. That like we need to support mechanisms that'll carry over in that intermediary time. So there will be interfaces that we're going to use to kind of shore up the differences there, and that'll be part of the OpenSearch config. What are you going to use as your identity provider? So that would be an opportunity for another plugin to fill that gap. And I think the mechanism we're looking at is just expressing what class you want to load. So if you're loaded by OpenSearch, it can load your class. It can load that that other system, and then you could just replace everything as long as you're implementing those interfaces. Replace everything with your own version of it, which would support the third-party plugins there. To the second question you had about DLS, FLS, and many customers with many different needs. Yes, that DLS, FLS, how we express more interesting kinds of access control are very complicated, and I don't know that we have a universal solution, and I don't know where we'll how we'll look at approaching that. That's definitely something that we're considering with this work, especially as that's been something that partnering with other plugins has been difficult. But we're early days on how that works, and I don't know how deeply embedded into core things like that will be versus optionality or configurability. One of the things I also have in mind with just the many different customers for security platforms, some folks are interested in permissioning a cluster for 4 people, right? They want a very simple, straightforward security framework, access control framework, and they don't really want, they're not interested in more levels of hierarchy and organization as far as access goes. And then we have folks at the other end of the spectrum that are giant enterprises that have thousands of customers with different levels of access control in different systems. They clearly need something better than the tools that would work well for 4 people operating on the same cluster. So we're gonna need to design out probably some different systems that can service those more higher level concepts for those different use cases. But the design for this identity work is that it will satisfy the underpinnings, and then we can layer tools and technology on top of that will be better appropriate for customers. And hopefully similar design philosophy can be used for different kinds of permissions and access control like DLS and FLS. Does that answer your question? Was that
thanks, Peter. And I think standardizing and making security better available to other plugins is an absolute good thing. Yeah. So looking forward to join the discussion and to see where that leads. Perfect. Thanks.
I just wanted to add a quick plug. Hi, I'm Dave. I work in Peter's team. So just the fact that we've been talking for 15 minutes after Peter was done with all this means that this is a very core topic that people are very passionate and rightfully so about. So I just wanted to close it out by plugging in please provide all that feedback on these issues that we'll be creating to conduct that discussion, because we would love to capture all this open questions and all those things that we should consider to design this. We're not doing this in a vacuum, so we couldn't do this without all of you pitching in. So please go and engage on all the issues that are open and that will be open in the future.
Yeah, totally agree. That was linked also up above. Hold on, I'll put that link one more time for this issue. Thank you, Peter. Thank you for coming and thank you for presenting. Here we go. And with that, we're going to move on to Lucas, who is going to be talking about the analyzers endpoint, which I'll let you describe it. I was excited about this as well, so looking forward to it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So hello, everyone. I'm Lukáš. I'm actually with Ivan. So let me quickly share what I have here. I guess these are the two windows that we need. Okay, so let's first jump into the presentation. Yes. So what I would like, actually, what I would like to do is not only talk about what I did, but also propose a new OpenSearch API. So actually, why we need new API? This is what I'm going to talk about. I will give a very quick demo about it. I would like to mention a few things about implementation, and of course, what is next. So why we need new API? So basically, in my past, I've spent a couple of years, setting up also Elasticsearch and the text analysis, how things are indexed and things like that. And if you ever try to do that, you know it's not easy. It's quite complex. You need a lot of experience, and there are a lot of building blocks when it comes to setting up proper text analysis, how text is broken down into tokens, and there are token filters, character filters, normalizers, blah blah blah, all those things. And every time you do this, or at least this was my experience, you use the documentation a lot, because it's quite hard to remember everything by heart. So especially when a new user wants to understand how these things actually work, you can find some blog posts that are very high level, and they will just give us very high level overview of how things work, and then still you have to dive very deep into it. So of course the question is why there is no central registry or evidence of all the available building blocks of the analysis components. And when I say analysis components, I mean really analyzers, tokenizers, token filters, character filters, normalizers, and maybe some other things related to dictionaries. So so far, as I said, the users had to also rely on the thing that they know by heart, that they simply remember, or they need to dig into documentation, either online documentation or maybe sometimes even into source code. Why not? But still, I think there is a problem, because all those approaches can become out of the date very easily. I experienced this myself as well. So I questioned myself, hey, why actually OpenSearch actually can't tell us what are all the building blocks that we can use, right? Because it has to know it. It has it inside it. So I said to myself, okay, so it should be pretty straightforward, maybe easy. So let's try to implement it. It was not super easy, but it's not also super complicated as well. Let me show you right now. So yeah, going back to this previous slide. So basically my topic is that I'm proposing that, hey, maybe we can add this kind of new API for the nodes. I will explain why I call it nodes API in a minute, but right now let's go to the demo. So one of the easiest things that you can do is, not sure if you know it, but if you ever try to develop something with OpenSearch, you can run one node cluster on your machine just using the Gradle run command. Right now, when we go to, okay, I go here. When I go here, so what we know, okay, so right now I implemented it just as a plugin, just to verify that this idea can actually work. So this is what we see. We have this plugin installed, and if we go to node analyzers, okay, so this is actually what we get when we run the a single node of OpenSearch in a development mode. Ignore this part for now. I will explain why. But basically, and it was also new information for me that when you run a single node instance in a development mode, it contains some kind of analyzers and tokenizers out of the box, but very limited set. I think it's, I understand why. But yes, this is actually what you get out of the box. So we can see, okay, so this node has these 5 or 6 analyzers, 1 tokenizer. I will just ignore this one. I will explain what it is. Couple of token filters, no character filters, just 1 normalizer, and by default, no plugin. Okay, so this is what we have. I will show you very quickly what happens when we have something more interesting. So I have OpenSearch 2.4.1 with a couple of plugins installed. So yeah, usually when you do language analysis, you end up installing a couple of analysis plugins like ICU and maybe phonetic, blah blah, other things. So let's do the OpenSearch. So it has this new plugin installed on it as well. And if we now go here and I reload, so this is right now what we got. So we have tons of analyzers, of course, all the language stuff, things like that. Tons of tokenizers, token filters, blah, blah, blah. If I go down to the plugins thing, then I can see that right now what we have here is some kind of breakdown of which plugin brought in specific analyzers and specific tokenizers and things like that. So for example, here we have phonetic plugin that brings in just the phonetic token filter. Okay. ICU plugin, ICU analyzer, and some tokenizers, things like that. So this way we first can get a list of all those text analysis components that are available out of the box on that node that you can use as a user when you create your custom index analyzers. And then you get some kind of breakdown of where those individual components come from, which I think is interesting because I learned, okay, we have this information and it might be useful. So when I do this again, so I run once more time, I will run a single node on my machine, and I will just quickly explain what we see here. So this is how I tested because right now there is a small bug that I need to fix how the information from plugins are actually formatted in the JSON. But it was very interesting for me to learn that it's possible to actually implement tests for plugins that installs some other plugins that are just providing analysis plugins, because in the test I want to make sure that they are ordered in a specific way, they are presented in correct way and things like that. Anyway, let's get back to my presentation. Let's see what else do I have here. Okay, so this is the new endpoint. Now, a few points about the implementation details. So, as I said, I implemented it as a plugin right now. I think it would be, if found useful, it would make a lot more sense to contribute it upstream directly to the core of the OpenSearch. Because why? One thing I run into is that if it is implemented as a plugin, it has to use Java Reflections API because of how things are internally, structured in OpenSearch. If it were implemented as a component of upstream, I can imagine we can get rid of the use of Java Reflections, and I would probably have to do a couple small changes on it. Yeah, it's reusing the nodes API. So why it's actually node-based API, I would say. Well, this is how how individual nodes of OpenSearch are actually initialized. So there is some kind of bootstrap period where it's search through all the let's say internal modules or plugins, and whenever it finds, hey, this is a plugin of this analysis plugin type, then it will pull some list of the objects from this plugin and store it into internal registry. So it means the list can theoretically differ depending on which node you hit. So that's why it needs to be nodes based, because maybe, I'm not sure if what I say right now is true, but I can imagine that, for example, on a cluster management node, you maybe do not need to have installed all the language analysis plugins, right? And the nice thing is that any external plugin actually that you install into this OpenSearch cluster will show up in this list as I demonstrated in my test. Okay. So what is next? I would like to get some more feedback and your thoughts about, hey, is this something that can be useful or not? So that there is a ticket that I opened for this feature in the past. There is some repository where you can see the code. Still, it's work in progress. And that's it, basically. So if you have any questions, I'm glad to answer them. Oh, by the way, and I should say, I was thinking about similar feature for queries as well, because it's another thing where you can get easily lost if you do not know where to look for. So, but I'm not sure if it can be implemented in the same way. But anyway.
So I'm curious. Is this something that could be used to determine whether a plugin is working properly, or just whether it exists or not?
So how you can use it is that, okay, so I would like to use some or ask question, hey, what are all the analyzers that are available on that node? Because when you go to the documentation, hey, maybe it's outdated or you do not remember things correctly. This is like this information is already in OpenSearch. So let's find a way how we can expose it, because it can even help the documentation team or anyone else. I mean, for example, if you want to write GUI or some kind of client for OpenSearch, where you get and you want to do the code completion feature, how do you get a list of all those analyzers that you can suggest to the user to complete or something like that? It falls into that space, I would say. It's like, let's expose this information if we have it, because it can be useful in some cases. And right now what it does is that it basically just exposes those keywords, or let's say this way. Those are exactly the names that you would use when you would be creating your own analyzer or token filter or things like that.
Gotcha.
So real quick.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I hate to cut off. I'm going to pause real quick. We can come back to this. We have more time at the end for anyone who has questions. Sam, I noticed your hand is raised. I just wanted to cover one more thing, and then we can continue having feedback for that. So real quick, I'm just going to share, if you have not gotten your contributor coin, please reach out to us at OpenSearch Coins, Amazon.com. This is for those who have contributed in the last year, any sort of code or PRs into OpenSearch. We just want to send out a thank you. I have mine right here, and they're phenomenal. And our next meeting is going to be on, I believe it is the 30th. It's in 2 weeks. So we hope to see you all there. Chris, did you have something else to share about the coins? Oh, you're on mute. Chris, you're on mute.
I'm off mute now. Just a reminder, OpenSearch-coins at Amazon.com. Send a link to your PR. They're very nice. Good job to Charlotte Hinkle and Kevin Garcia on putting this project together to send these out. And we'd love to send you one if you've contributed in the last year. So thanks again. Yeah.
Not crypto. Thankfully, Chris. So with that, we're going to wrap up. And if anyone would like to hang around, Sam, I know you had a question for Lucas about the analyzer. So we can continue that conversation.
I actually,
and Nate.
Yeah, sorry. Sam, go ahead since you're a guest here. I wanted to point out Fernando's question in the chat about organizing local community events. Because I know that's something we've put some time into, like trying to put together some kind of like, community meeting in a box kit. But I think the question itself would be best addressed to our developer relations team, which is myself and David here.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
I was going to say,
Fernando.
Chris,
Yeah. Let me reach out to you. We're working on this actively, so we'd love to reach out and discover more of what you want to organize, and love to enable you to do so.
I'd love a reason to fly.
Yeah, we'd love to enable that effort across the globe, and we appreciate your interest in it. So let's talk very soon.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, everyone. And Sam, what was your question now?
Oh, just a quick one was, so for Lukash, it looks like you try to like extend the summarization capability. Do you think it's something we can integrate maybe with Cat's plugin instead of creating like a new API or some generalize it?
Yeah, I was thinking about I was thinking that okay, so maybe this information could be also exposed in a Cat API. Why not? I mean, probably it could somehow. I mean, as far as I remember, you can also ask Cat API to give you the JSON representation of the response as well. So it's like kind of, it works both ways. But internally, it would have been implemented the same way. How, I mean, the way how it access the list of those keys. My point was basically that I know that sometimes it can be really useful to be able to get access to that list. And right now, there is no way how you can do it. And sometimes you can be even surprised that you learn, okay, so there is another token filter that I have never heard of, what it's actually doing, things like that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can imagine that it can be part of Cat API. Why not? It says, yeah, why not? Feel free to go to the ticket and comment. Probably,
No
right?
problem. I think I was just trying to make sure I understand the use case, but if I understand that the information that it provides is very important. Was wondering what would be easier to maintain for the community.
Yeah. And I have no, preferred opinion about that. I can imagine it can be exposed in certain ways. But yeah.
I think the explain, like the way to see what your tokenizer did and like how is it working on the data is also like very weak at the moment. Like you can kind of do explain, but if you do a custom tokenizer, then you can't tell the explain API, use my custom tokenizer.
Okay, so yeah, I should probably stress one more thing. So if there are custom, not only tokenizers, but I would say language analyzers that consist of tokenizer and other things. Those things are not reusable. If you create it for your index, I mean, you have it, but if someone else would like to use it as well or create, they will have to replicate exactly the same configuration of their indices. So what this API actually represents is the building blocks that are available to anyone from the start. So these are the things that anyone can use and pick from and create their own analyzers or tokenizers based on. Yes, the thing is, would it be possible to provide more information about what they do? I mean, what they are useful for? That's a kind of tricky, because on a Lucene level, as far as I've been looking, it's not that easy to learn or get some, hey, what you do, tell me what you do. You have to try it out. But also, if you ask, it's not possible to ask analyzer, hey, what kind of tokenizer are you using, and what is your complete chain of token filters? Tell me about that. There is nothing like that, and I understand that probably at a Lucene level, this is not what you should be interested in, because at a Lucene level, you are the developer and you compose the things together, so you know what you are doing. But on an OpenSearch level, it's a different thing. So, but I haven't got deep into that. I'm not sure if it's needed at this point. My goal was just to be able to present all the building blocks for the analyzers that are there.
Cool.
Thanks. One thing that we might want to talk about, maybe not today, because I know we're a little over time, but it might be interesting to talk about reusable like composed analyzers. Like right now you can create those in templates, but what if we were able to expose those to other people so that you're like, hey, look, this is what we use in our org, and then you can just call this out, analyzer, reuse this already created analyzer set that we found works well in our domain.
That kind of connects to a very big subject of sharing configurations, like, for example, dashboards.
Yeah.
I have a really great dashboard for Kubernetes. I have a really great dashboard for viewing AWS issues. And I have also, and it goes all the way to like, how do you configure your cluster to, how do you use it? And then what kind of configurations do you use in order for it to work best for different scenarios? It's like a very big topic. I think that's like companies have been built around that.
That's really interesting. And that's a good point. Maybe we should do that next week as just like a open discussion topic,
Yeah, it almost seems like the secret sauce that some people use to make their OpenSearch cluster the most useful for their particular knowledge domain.
Yeah. Interesting. I like it. Well, thank you, everyone. And sorry we've gone over, but thank you so much for everyone who shared and everyone who asked comments, and please go comment on issues. Guys, take care.
We hit 43 people today. That's a new max for us. So thanks
44.
Oh, it was 44. Oh,
was
thanks for the
44.
record,
That's really
guys. That's
great.
awesome.
You're counting my office and my laptop, but I think it's okay.
I think it was before you joined from the office. I do.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. There was definitely 44.
Yeah, it was before.
I'm connecting my phone at the same time.
That's funny.
All right.